Greetings, lore seekers, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we delve into the ultimate what-if of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. What if the impossible happened? What if the God Emperor of mankind, the Silent King upon the Golden Throne, were restored to his former glory? For 10,000 years, the Master of mankind has languished, a psychic beacon and a dying god. His immense will sustains the Imperium, guiding navigators through the warp and holding back the most insidious of its horrors. But this is a pale imitation of his once formidable power. So let's imagine the unimaginable, the Emperor, healed, whole, and return to his full, terrifying might. What would be the immediate consequences? The sheer psychic shockwave of the Emperor's awakening would be a cataclysmic event, a galactic-scale tremor in the very fabric of reality. The Golden Throne, once a monument to 10,000 years of suffering, would become a conduit for his unfettered psychic power. Its arcane technology, which for so long has merely sustained a dying god, would now amplify the living Emperor's immense will, turning it into a roaring, psychic furnace that blazes brighter than 1,000,000 suns. This torrent of raw energy would crash across the galaxy, affecting every psyker like a tidal wave. For sanctioned psykers of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, it would be a moment of both glory and terror. The powerful and disciplined would feel their abilities surge to levels they had only dreamed of, their minds becoming more potent tools for the Imperium. However, the weak and untrained would be utterly overwhelmed, their minds immolating from the strain or consumed by the flood of untamed power. Many would ascend, becoming entities of unimaginable might, while countless others would simply cease to exist, their bodies reduced to ash and their souls torn asunder. The Astronomicon, the Emperor's psychic lighthouse, would be the most immediate and visible manifestation of his return. Its flickering, strained beacon would instantly flare to a brilliance that would pierce even the deepest warp storms and the most turbulent regions of the Great Rift. Navigators, for the first time in millennia, would find their routes through the Imperium charted with an unheard-of clarity, reducing the perils of warp travel and allowing for the swift movement of Imperial fleets. This newfound stability in the warp would be a direct challenge to the ruinous powers, whose very existence is predicated on chaos and corruption. The sudden, immense psychic pressure would not just push back against demonic incursions, it would actively tear them apart, dissolving demons and banishing them back into the Imperium with a savage finality. What other immediate effects might this surge of power have on the galaxy's myriad psychic phenomena? The Emperor's restored power would not only affect psykers, but also fundamentally reshape the Imperium's military and logistical capabilities. The renewed clarity of the Astronomicon would turn the treacherous warp from a sea of unpredictable madness into a navigable, albeit still dangerous, highway. This improved warp travel would have several key impacts, reconnecting the Imperium. Lost sectors, shrouded in impenetrable warp storms for millennia, could once again be reached. Planets that have survived in isolation, developing their own cultures and technologies, would be brought back into the Imperial fold. This would not be a peaceful reunion. The Imperium would demand tithes and conformity from these long-lost worlds, likely leading to new conflicts. Stabilizing supply lines. The Imperium's current supply lines are tenuous and unreliable due to the unpredictable nature of warp travel. With a stable Astronomicon, warp routes would become more consistent, allowing for the reliable movement of troops, munitions, and vital resources. This would enable the Imperium to launch and sustain large-scale campaigns with greater efficiency. Starving war zones could be resupplied, and beleaguered garrisons could finally receive reinforcements, turning the tide of countless battles. Coordinated warfare. Currently, the Imperium's military strategy is a disjointed, sector-by-sector affair. A unified command is nearly impossible when communication and travel are so unreliable. The Emperor's return would change this. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Imperium could coordinate a true, galaxy-wide response to its myriad threats. Fleets from disparate sectors could rendezvous at predetermined points, and entire crusade forces could be marshaled to face a single, overwhelming enemy. This newfound ability to act as a cohesive whole could turn the tide against the encroaching darkness. The return of the Emperor would be a catastrophic event for the forces of chaos, directly challenging their dominion over the Imperium. For 10 millennia, the ruinous powers have feasted on humanity's fear, ambition, and despair, their influence growing stronger with every passing day. The Emperor's revival would be a sudden and brutal reversal of this trend. Chaos and the warp. The psychic might of the awakened Emperor would be a purifying fire in the Imperium. His very presence would act as a powerful psychic counterforce, pushing back against the encroaching tides of chaos. This wouldn't be a subtle change. Demonic incursions would be violently repelled, their anchors to the material realm severed with a force that would make the Cadian pylon gateways look like child's play. Demons would shriek as their physical forms dissolved, banished back to the warp in a spray of ethereal essence. Chaos cults, whose power is drawn directly from their dark gods, would find their connection either severely weakened or cut off completely in the Emperor's immediate vicinity. Their dark blessings would falter, their rituals would fail, and their followers would be left utterly bereft of the power they crave. Xenos empires. The Xenos races, from the cunning toe to the ravenous Tyranids, would immediately sense the resurgence of humanity's ultimate leader. For many, it would be a moment of pure, unadulterated fear. They have long regarded the Imperium as a bloated, decaying empire, a slow-moving target ripe for conquest. The Emperor's return would prove this assumption catastrophically wrong. The slumbering giant has awakened, and its power is greater than ever. This would likely cause a shift in their strategies. Some would redouble their aggression, hoping to defeat the resurgent Imperium before it could fully consolidate its power. Others, perhaps the more calculating races like the Necrons, might reconsider their plans or even seek to align against the common enemy of chaos. The sudden change in the balance of power would make the galaxy an even more dangerous place, as every faction, from the smallest Orc tribe to the most ancient Eldar craftworld, would be forced to react to the reality of an awakened Emperor. The Emperor's return would not just impact the enemies of humanity, it would shake the very foundations of the Imperium itself, creating unprecedented political and religious turmoil. The High Lords of Terror. For 10,000 years, the High Lords of Terror have governed the Imperium in the Emperor's name. They are the supreme commanders of the Imperial war machine, the masters of the Adeptus Terra, and the ultimate arbiters of human destiny. Their power is absolute, their rivalries are ancient, and their positions are secured by a labyrinth of carefully constructed political alliances and backroom deals. The Emperor's revival would make all of this utterly irrelevant. The High Lords would find themselves face to face with a living, breathing God King who possesses a will so immense that it could break their minds with a single thought. Their reactions would vary dramatically. Some, like the Lord Commander of the Segmentum Solar, might kneel in reverent awe, willingly relinquishing their authority to the one true master of mankind. Others, particularly those whose power is derived from corruption or self-interest, would be terrified by the loss of their influence. This fear would likely lead to desperate measures. secret pacts, betrayals, and even assassination attempts as they try to protect their power base. The result would be a fierce, silent war for control of the Imperium's heart, fought in the shadows of the Imperial Palace. The Ecclesiarchy. The impact on the Ecclesiarchy, the galaxy-spanning state church of the Imperium, would be perhaps the most complex and unpredictable. For 10 millennia, they have preached the divinity of the Emperor, and their entire theological framework is built around his sacrifice and martyrdom on the Golden Throne. His return as a living, breathing, and terrifyingly powerful entity could either validate their faith in unimaginable ways or shatter it completely. The initial reaction could be one of extreme fervor, a holy crusade to cleanse the galaxy of all who oppose the now ascended God Emperor. The power of faith, combined with the Emperor's psychic might, could turn the Imperial Guard and the Adepta Sororitas into an unstoppable force. However, the Emperor himself has always viewed religion with disdain. His grand design for humanity was always based on logic and reason, not blind faith. This fundamental conflict would create a massive schism within the Church. Hardline zealots might cling to their long-held doctrines, refusing to believe in the living God before them and branding his return a demonic trick. Reformers, on the other hand, would embrace the new reality, attempting to rewrite centuries of doctrine overnight. This ideological divide would create a brutal civil war within the Ecclesiarchy, a war of words and deeds that could tear the Imperium apart from the inside. The return of the Emperor would be a moment of profound change for the Space Marines, the very legions he created to be the ultimate defenders of humanity. For 10,000 years, these demigods have fought and died in his name, believing their purpose to be eternal. His reawakening would either be the ultimate validation of their sacrifice or the beginning of a terrifying uncertainty. A new purpose or no purpose at all. For many chapters, particularly those that cling to the original imperial truth, the Emperor's return would be a moment of ultimate validation. The millennia of hardship, the relentless wars, and the countless sacrifices would all be vindicated by the sight of their living God. Their purpose, once a matter of faith and fragmented lore, would be reaffirmed by the presence of their Creator. They would fight with a fervor and discipline unseen since the Great Crusade, a direct extension of the Emperor's will in the material world. The Blood Angels, whose very existence is a fight against the madness of their gene seed, might find their curse lifted. The Dark Angels, forever haunted by their past, might finally be forgiven. However, the Emperor's grand design for humanity was always one of eventual self-reliance. He created the Primarchs and the Space Marines as tools meant to be used to conquer the galaxy and then step aside, allowing humanity to govern itself. He never intended for them to be a permanent fixture in the galactic landscape. His return would force the Space Marines to confront an uncomfortable truth. Their long-term role in his new vision for humanity might not exist at all. The Astartes Schism. This ideological conflict would likely lead to a great Astartes Schism. Those who embrace the Emperor's new directives might turn on their more stubborn brethren, leading to bloody internecine conflicts. Chapters that have grown too independent, too steeped in their own traditions and legends, might resist the Emperor's direct command, seeing it as a threat to their autonomy. They might view his return not as a salvation, but as an attempt to strip them of the very identity they have forged over 10 millennia. The Emperor's return would force a reckoning among the Space Marines, a battle for the soul of the Astartes that would be fought not just with bolters and chain swords, but with the very purpose for which they were created. The Emperor's awakening would be a monumental event, but it would not be a magic fix for the galaxy. The Imperium he once led is a far cry from the galactic empire he envisioned. The universe is a much darker and more dangerous place than it was 10,000 years ago, and the very foundation of his Imperium has been eroded by suffering and stagnation. The wounds of 10 millennia. The wounds inflicted by the Horus heresy have never healed. The Imperium has been at a constant state of war for millennia, fighting on 1,000 fronts against a tide of enemies that have only grown stronger. The threats he left behind have evolved into something far more insidious and powerful. The Chaos Gods have had 10,000 years to spread their influence, corrupting entire sectors and turning worlds into their own twisted playgrounds. The Horus heresy was a brutal lesson, but the legions of chaos today are more numerous and more fanatical than ever. The Necrons, once a distant threat, are now a resurgent force, with ancient dynasties reawakening across the galaxy. Their cold, calculating minds and unimaginable technology are a challenge that even the Emperor's power might struggle to overcome. The Tyranids, a ravenous swarm of alien life, have consumed countless worlds and are only just beginning to make their presence truly felt in the galaxy. Their sheer numbers and a collective will that dwarfs any other are a terrifying prospect. The Toe, a relatively new force, represent a different kind of threat. They are a rapidly expanding empire with advanced technology and a unified purpose. They are not a mindless horde or a corrupting influence, but a strategic foe that could challenge the Imperium's military might in a way the Emperor has never seen before. A heavy burden. Even at his full power, the Emperor would face challenges that are far beyond any he has encountered before. The Imperium he awakens to is a bloated, inefficient, and fanatical empire. The grand, unified human civilization he built is gone, replaced by a crumbling edifice held together by dogma and ignorance. The ingrained bureaucracy of the Adeptus Terra, the pervasive corruption that has festered for millennia, and the fanatical dogma of the ecclesiarchy are all obstacles that even his immense will might struggle to overcome quickly. He would have to wage a war of ideas against the very institutions he created to manage his empire. The Emperor's return is a moment of great hope, but it is also the beginning of a new and even more terrifying conflict. The Imperium's greatest enemy might not be the forces of chaos or the Xenos, but the very things that were born from the long millennia of his absence. Despite all of the good that could occur for the Imperium of man, there are still some possible disasters that may happen in the wake of the Emperor's rebirth. The destruction of Terra. The first and most immediate negative effect of the Emperor leaving the Golden Throne would be the destruction of Terra. The Golden Throne isn't just a life support system for the Emperor. It's a psychic anchor that holds a tear in the fabric of reality shut. This tear, located directly beneath the Imperial Palace, leads to a demonic incursion of unimaginable scale. For 10 millennia, the Emperor's psychic might has been the only thing keeping the gate closed. If he were to leave the throne, even for a moment, the tear would rip open and a flood of demons would pour onto Terra, consuming the planet and all its inhabitants in a matter of hours. The very heart of the Imperium would be annihilated, an ironic end for the one who spent so long preserving it. A new chaos god. Another, even more terrifying possibility is that the Emperor's immense psychic power and the sheer scale of worship directed at him could transform him into a new chaos god. The living Imperial saints, who are believed to be vessels for the Emperor's divine power, are already considered by some to be a type of demon, as they are beings of pure warp energy that are a reflection of the Imperium's collective faith. If the Emperor were to be restored, the unbridled devotion of trillions of souls could give birth to a new entity in the warp, a being of pure human emotion and will, a god of order, zeal, and perhaps even tyranny. This new god would be a direct rival to the existing Chaos gods, but it would also be a potential threat to the Imperium. A god of order would be an anathema to free will, and its absolute control would likely turn the Imperium into a totalitarian regime far worse than the one it already is. The full restoration of the Emperor of mankind would not be a simple end to the Imperium's suffering, but a new and terrifying beginning. It would be a galaxy-altering event, a moment of both unimaginable hope and potential catastrophic upheaval, a new era of dominance. The Emperor's return could be the dawning of a new era, a true crusade to reclaim the stars. With his direct will guiding them, the Imperial fleets would no longer be a series of disjointed warbands, but a single, unified force. The forces of the Imperium would be able to fight with a precision and coordination unseen since the Great Crusade. The Emperor's psychic might would serve as a beacon, guiding his forces through the warp and shattering the morale of his enemies. With a living god at the helm, the Imperium would finally have a fighting chance against the myriad threats that seek to tear it apart. Catastrophic upheaval. However, the Emperor's return could also shatter the fragile stability of the Imperium. The powerful institutions that have ruled in his name for 10,000 years, like the High Lords of Terror and the Ecclesiarchy, would not easily surrender their power. Their resistance would lead to a bitter civil war, fought not just on battlefields, but in the shadows of the Imperial Palace itself. The Emperor's vision of a secular, rational humanity would clash with the ingrained dogma of the Imperial faith, creating a schism that could tear the Imperium apart from the inside. A final reckoning. Ultimately, the Emperor's return would force a final reckoning. The galaxy is a much more dangerous place than it was during the Great Crusade. The forces of chaos, the resurgent Necrons, the ever-growing Tyranids, and the ambitious Toe are all threats that have grown in power and cunning over the last 10 millennia. The Emperor, even at his full power, would face challenges unlike any he has seen before. His return would not be a victory, but a continuation of the great struggle for the soul of the galaxy, a struggle that might not end until every last star is extinguished. What do you think, lore seekers? What other consequences would the Emperor's return bring? Would the Imperium be destroyed? Would chaos finally be laid low? Let us know your theories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Lorelord for more Warhammer 40,000 lore, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the grim darkness of the far future.